Hi, welcome to another book review by Geospinach. Today we are reviewing The Ascent of Money by Niall Ferguson. Now, Niall Ferguson, before I start, I have to say it's quite a brilliant historian, and I quite like almost all of his works, or at least the ones I've read, and they are quite good books. This book isn't his best one, but still, many will find it quite interesting. Now, the name of the book is The Ascent of Money by Niall Ferguson. The genre is the history of economics, and it mainly argues about the history of the finance, the foundation, how finance is part of human history, how the credit has evolved, and the debt along it. Debt and credit has evolved throughout various civilizations. It put emphasis on the Renaissance banks of Italy, not as much as it should have. How wars, especially prolonged wars, have influenced the government's approach to lending, and thus how they see and observe money as means of power. Then it moves on to joint stock companies and the stock market, and then follows on to the evolution of the insurance system and why was it vital to the financial system. And then lastly, exploring bubbles and other modern events. Now, this field, the history of economics, is a field which I'm generally specialized at, especially because, well, my bachelor is in economics and I am an economist with a specialization of microeconomics, and I've studied the history of economics quite a lot. Now, in general, it does a very good job in showing the very basics. It goes in depth by giving some historical examples, especially in the pre-modern era, which for an audience that has no clue of the history of economics, it will be quite a good understanding. And it gives a very good description of how the basics of how money works. Now, the issues with the book, and that's why this is going to be one of my lowest reviews, it lacks depth, especially in modern events, completely. And the general audience are for people that don't know about any economics. And then it tackles an issue such as monetary and money, which by itself is quite a complex issue within economics. And as a result, ignores a lot of fundamentals in economics. And I have to say, Niall Ferguson doesn't show that much knowledge, especially of economics, of school of thoughts, of generally how economies work, especially in the monetary sphere, which he tries to tackle and argues, and that is my biggest issue with this book. Completely ignores the major economists in the history of economics and the major schools of thought, from the Keynesians to Chicago to the Austrian school of thought, the Marxistian Cross, the Schubert, barely touches Adam Smith. It goes very shallow on economic events to the point that I can even argue that the book is quite misleading on that factors. And I have to say that I'm quite disappointed by the book because its target audience are people that have no fundamentals on economics at all. Because if you have some fundamentals of economics, then there are way better books that go much more in detail for you to understand the history of money than this book. This book is not going to give you that much, except some old, very specific examples, which are really nice. Outside of that, the structure and narrative is around 5 out of 10. The book jumps around quite a lot, which is quite annoying and a bit hard to follow, even if the concepts it argues are very easy. The accuracy, well, I'm giving it a 7 out of 10 because the things the author argues are not wrong, nor they are inaccurate. They are accurate. There is just a general lack of them. So it gives you some examples of the history of money, but actually very little of them, and thus gives a very small understanding of how money have developed throughout the years. So generally, I didn't like its work at all. Now the narration is quite good, and the book is generally small, so 6.1 out of 10. If you're an individual doesn't know anything about money and you're just specifically interested about the history of money and a bit learning more about how money have developed, then this could be a good book for you. Personally, I disagree with the approach that the book has taken. Nonetheless, it's not a terrible book, so it's not a bad book. It's just a bit of meh. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.